Welcome to today's Photoshop School, where we're looking at a fine art finish again. We're looking today specifically at a trend in kind of tilt shifting backgrounds. So I'm going to kind of talk us through the step-by-step how you kind of create this kind of effect. And again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. You'll know that basically by default, I try and do all the work or as much as I can within the likes of the camera itself. So I naturally use either a prime lens with a wide aperture or a long lens with a wide aperture. So in other words, I'm shooting usually at 2.8 f4 kind of thing. But there's times that you want the kind of the background and the image to kind of take on a whole different kind of look and feel and things really. So we're going to be looking at how we can create these kind of effects. They're going to be basically a couple of main techniques, which are first of all selecting the subject and kind of deleting them from the scene and kind of fixing the background so that nothing's visible. And then we're going to add in a blur gallery to blur the background, and then we're going to add some colors on top to actually make it work in the kind of the best way we can and things really. So I would say that if we kind of go ahead and we grab an image. I'll just save this one as a JPEG. Save there, it's okay. And that's going to be multi-layered, and that would just save off as a PSD there if you didn't see what I was doing. And let's go and grab this JPEG file. So this is going to be 54 bare, and we'll start from scratch. So let's go from the image itself. Bear on cushion, 54 here. Let's open this one up. So before and after, as we just saw, and we're going to just through that step by step. Okay, so it's kind of adding a depth of field, changing the depth of field is really what we're going to be doing. Now, different ways to be different things. Okay, if I wanted to work fast to just see what it was going to be like, I could just duplicate the background. Yes, I could go into the filter gallery and go into blur gallery and basically go into tilt shift. This is where we're going to end up, okay? And then we could reposition where we want the blur of the background to be quite extreme. Change by clicking onto the middle of the dial to where we actually want the focus point visible. So in this case, with this image, it's going to be very, very close to the floor, by her feet, in fact. And then once we've kind of dialed in the amount of blur, we can then actually change the way that it transitions kind of through. We can also change the actual hard area as well, where it's going to transition through. And then we just press OK. And then, of course, I could just quickly pick onto a mask on the layers palette, and then B for brush, D for default, X to put black on top. And then I could just go ahead and kind of bring her back to actually see if it's the kind of effect that I want and everything else with it. So that's a kind of a quick way to do the technique that we're doing, all right? Except that is more of a test kind of starting point. But I just want to give you the idea that when you're kind of trying to look at a creative finish, then don't be afraid to actually, first of all, look at the quick concept of how you could do it before you then go on to kind of go the correct way, as it were, and things. Remember, Photoshop is a language, and there's many ways to get to London from Cardiff. I can go via Scotland or Sheffield or even via Dublin and back again. So, you know, there's loads of ways to get to the same place where I want to go to. It'll just be a longer way around. Okay, so what are we going to do? The first things first, let's select our subject. So we're going to click onto the selection tools here, yes, and we're going to then click on to select subject. The AI then is going to do its job and basically do a really good job of selecting around the girl, but I want to add into this selection as well. So I can now just go and choose likes of a magic wand or a quick selection tool. And then just by clicking onto the different areas within the image, I can actually go in and basically add into my selection. I can also go in and take away some of the selection as well. So just actually perhaps with the Alt key and just kind of dragging through there, that didn't work as well. So we can just go into the lasso tool, pressing the Alt key and basically selecting the ground there and just dragging the lasso around it. So we kind of got a good bit to begin with. I just need to add in that little bit of the case between the legs there. And now we want to actually just kind of refine the image more. So we're just going to go up now to select the mask. And in this case, we want to just, first of all, just drag outside of the hair. And then we'll just do this nice and slowly. And then we'll go around the bear. Just add in a little bit more of detail of the hair around the image itself. Just go here on the case as well. And then just kind of going up through the back of the case. Finally, up the back of the hair. Okay, so we've kind of made our basic selection. And now we're going to output this. We're going to do a new layer with layer mask. Click onto that one, and then I'm just going to press OK. So what we've got here now, because I switch off the bottom layer, we can see we've got the selection of the girl, which is pretty much doing its job. And we've obviously got our background, the original. Now, at this point, what I want to do is remove the girl from this background layer. So if I select onto background, makes the layer kind of selection with all the white lines around the thumbnail. At this point, I want to make a duplicate layer of the layer. So I'm just going to drag it down to the plus or Control J to duplicate that layer. Now what I want to do is remove the girl. So because we've made a selection here and it's now a mask, by control clicking onto the actual mask itself on the layer above, even though it's switched off, that will actually make a selection of what the mask is based on. Okay. We can still go through if we want to kind of expand it, contract it, whatever you want to do. In this case, we're just going to go up into Edit, Content Aware Fill. And at this stage, it's going to do a pretty-ish good job on her and things really. Just going to press OK. And now what we're going to do is just do Control D to deselect the girl. And as you can see, what it's done is actually put a new layer on top of the background layer. So in fact, she's still kind of there. What I want to do is crush these two layers together. So let's select these two layers by clicking them, and then Control E to basically flatten those together. So now we have three layers. We have on the top, we have the selection layer. The middle layer, we have the kind of semi-fixed background. And then on the bottom layer, we have the background, the original. So what we're going to do is work just on this background layer for now. We need to make sure that to the right-hand side of the thumbnail, this gray is selected to make sure that this is the active layer. And then we're just going to go up and choose on one of the selection kind of tools. So fixing them, in other words. Yeah, let's click onto the brush tool. And if we just press onto an area where we want to copy from, and then we can just go in and start to actually kind of fix this image. Now, we could have made a better selection, the content aware fill. There's loads of things that we could have done to make this a little bit more of a kind of a good job before we did it. But this is a great way for us to go in and show the kind of elements of the photograph we're trying to kind of fix and the problems that it has as well. So here we go. We're just using it. If I want to clone from a certain space, of course, I could go and pick up the patch tool and I could select all this area by here. I could then go across to the area I want to copy it from, and it'll do a kind of a job. Yeah. So I could actually copy it from any of the areas within the photograph to kind of start to kind of get rid of it. Right. So we don't need to be too fussy. I will give an end to this tree though there. A little bit more Yeah, there we go. And we're now going to, let's bring the girl back. Okay, so she's there on that separate layer, so we still have her. There's a little bit of a kind of a weirdness going on up here, so let's go in and fix that to begin with, just in case it's going to look bad. Okie doke. And what we're now going to do is I'm just clicking the eyeball on to reactivate that layer visible. Okay, so that's all I'm doing is switching it off, switching it on again. What we're going to do is make sure that this background copy is the one that is active. Remember, it shows you in a lighter gray than the others. And at this point, we're going to right click it and we're going to convert it to a smart object. And the reason being in that is when we start to add effects to a layer, by converting them into a smart object, especially if we're going to use things like filters, we can actually go back into it and basically change the filter effect. Okay. Do I really need to do it with this image? Technically, no, I don't. Okay. However, it's good work in practice for me to demonstrate it to you. So in this case, we're going to come up now into filter. And we're going to go into the blur gallery. If you were here last week, we were working with path blur. Today we're working in tilt shift. And as I just showed you at the beginning of today's demonstration, what we're doing is first of all grabbing the dot, this middle dot of the kind of the middle of the tilt shift, as it were, and we're going to move it down within the image. I don't necessarily need to move it to start the effect, but if you put it near to where you think you want the tilt shift to be, then it's going to look better straight from the beginning. Now there's going to be two hard lines, one above the dot, yep, and one below the dot. Each of them has their little kind of white dots, as you can see. Remember, on Go to Meeting, you can actually zoom in with your scroll wheel, mouse, whatever it is, and I can also kind of scroll in with my mouse just to actually get in closer. So what we're doing here is we're going to affect the blur by using the wheel, the dial, okay? There's also a slider on the top right-hand side here for me to go in and adjust if I want to. But I'm going to do it from the wheel. I'm just going to kind of drag it around the clock to start to really put the tilt shift into a more dramatic look. In addition to the two hard lines, you also see some checkered lines, which is basically the kind of the transition, the feather and things, yeah, of how it kind of works out. And I can either push it up or push it down to make the effect either greater or lesser. So if we now say, well, okay, that's good, but really the tilt shift effect is going to be pretty much just behind the suitcase. And I can either bring it more or less in within the image itself. So remember, all I'm doing is adjusting the blur on the dial here, or if I wanted to, go up and actually use the actual arrow itself, and that has the same effect on the bar as it does when I move this dial of the wheel here. Okay, so if that's done, I'm just going to press OK. And if I had gone into the gallery without the top layer, in other words, the selection of the girl live, all you would have seen was the actual background layer and things, okay? So already we can see what we've just done. We've created a lot more of this kind of fantasy fine art kind of look and feel. Now, it automatically, because we're in a smart object, it automatically creates for us the likes of a mask, but it also creates this filter effect. And if I double click it, it means I can go in and move where I actually want the effect to take place. So in other words, I want a more of a drastic effect at the bottom of the image. So all the sharpness is here, and then the background is pretty much gone straight away. I just press OK again. We're pretty much back to the better kind of looking image. And so that's the first stage of our fine art kind of defocusing the background. Okay, so that's really what we're doing. If I wanted a little bit more detail on the trunk of the tree, then of course I could just click onto the mask and kind of paint that in and out and so on with it. But we'll leave it as it is to make it look like it was shot on 0 point whatever it is of an f-stop to actually drop the background out so much and things really. So this tilt shift, we've created the plane of where we want the sharpness and we're dropping everything out. You could do this in the likes of Lego figures and everything else if you're doing some kind of creative fun macro work and things. Right, so what's the next thing to do? Well, pretty much if that's what you want to create, we're pretty much done. All right. There's a couple of little things that we might want to actually do within the image itself then. We might want to add some flair onto the photograph. So with the background copy 3, which is the tilt shift, I'm just going to double click this and change it to tilt shift effect. Okay, so we've actually going to refer to this layer now as the tilt shift effect. What I'm going to do is add in a bit of a flare. So let's create a new layer, which is above the tilt shift effect. And we're going to go in and select a lightish kind of color. Doesn't have to be white. All right, just going to press OK. And then with B for brush, we're going to make it quite big. We're going to make sure that it's very soft. So there's no hardness to this at all. Let's kind of just bring it down a touch more. And let's just kind of put a bit of a highlight here. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to control it to create a bigger effect. So this is the kind of the blur effect that we've got going on. We've just made that bigger. So a bit of a more of a highlight coming through. Let's double click it to say yes. And then we can turn this into lightening it by going to screen. Yes, so you can see what we've done there. We've created this little bit more of a halo. Now, because I've got some dappled light coming through the trees, this is less important for me than perhaps it might be for you if you're in a wooded, dark environment where you need to bring some kind of light flare coming in from behind. Remember, even though I'm doing this once, I could do it 2 or 3 times around the image. So I've just turned the opacity down by holding the mouse on the actual word opacity, and that creates the scrubby effect, the finger. So if you push it to the left, it gets less. If you push it to the right, it becomes more. So we want to kind of just have a little bit of an effect here as far as the glow is concerned. And if you found that you didn't like the green and you prefer by kind of basic control, you prefer to actually put a white highlight on there and then color the highlight to the image that you're working with. So in other words, if you're making this into like a mini action from now on, then basically you could create a white highlight and then with a color adjustment with it, and then you color layer, as it were, above it, and just kind of clip it to that photograph. And then we could actually tell it to be any color we want. Okay, so we're pretty much, we've already changed dramatically our image now, as we can see, but let's change the overall coloring to a little bit more of a kind of a fine art kind of coloring feel and so on with it. So remember, we fixed any issues with the background. We've got our layer on top, which is the girl. We've got our flare coming through, and of course, we've got our tilt shift effect as far as the background's concerned. So at this stage, if we're going to add some dramatic coloring, let's work on that. So let's work on an adjustment layer. So the first thing we're going to do is click onto gradient map. And you'll see by default, it kind of it's based on the kind of the colors that you've got in choice or whatever it would be. I want to actually go and double click onto the gradient map itself. And I want to go backwards and choose the legacy the gradients. So if I just click on the legacy gradients here, if I go to the legacy default gradients and I pick up something like the blue, red, yellow, you can see we're going to have a massive effect across the image. Don't panic yet. I haven't been doing anything, I promise you, smoking anything cool. Anyway, But now what we want to do is basically change its effect on the whole image. Is it going to be with just opacity? In this case, it is. Can you see it? So now all of a sudden we've added a kind of a smartphone filter across the image by kind of allowing those colors to really change. Works good, this one, for like a woodland or autumn effect, whatever it be. And remember, you can go in here and basically change the different kind of blend modes. In this case, we don't need to. We're just going to actually change the opacity, and we're pretty much done there. We're down to about 17% here. Next thing, let's go and change the color even more by clicking on and adding a channel mixer. So this is clicking on to the layer Half Moon. Then we're going to add in a new adjustment layer, which is going to be the channel mixer. And basically, we're going to work on each one of these individually. So what do we want to do with the reds? Do we want to warm things up a little bit more? Not a lot. What do we want to do? Do we want to work in the blues to kind of adjust those a little bit? Less yellow, more yellow. Is there something within the greens that we want to kind of adjust as well? And you can see by default, when we click onto each of these output channels, it already has some effect onto the one channel. So what is going on within the image? So it's saying, do you want to affect this by adjust the slider? We go into the red channel for a minute, and we kind of just tone that back a little bit, and then we just perhaps increase a diagonal. Do we want to work in the diagonals in the opposite way? You know, I think for this image, we can just double click on that blue and just affect those reds. I'm getting near to the kind of the warmth, the autumn warmth that I really like. And then we're going to just go into a color balance overall. So we're just going to shift into a new adjustment layer, color balance, and we're just going to work on the mid-tones. And we'll just kind of look at the sliders here of what we want to affect. So towards the red with the blues. We want to move to the warms away from the greens, so we want to bring a little bit more accent to the green. I think we can afford to bring accent to the green. And what we want to do with the blues, we want to deepen the actual mid-tones of the blues a little bit more. We want to lighten the yellows. Now I think the blues is kind of correct for this kind of look and feel that we're doing. Okay, so there's our adjustments overall. Perhaps we could adjust a vibrancy layer to the whole effect, whether we want to increase the colors more or decrease the colors. That's really down, I think, here at this stage is where you make your decision whether you prefer it more saturated overall or you prefer to take out some of the tone. Remember, the vibrance tends to affect more the skin tony kind of colors more than anything else with it. So pretty much done. I think to add into the effect though, let's go in and just select the tilt shift layer, and above it we'll now go in and add in a, what should we do? Add in a brightness contrast layer. We're going to do levels then, but let's do brightness contrast, and then we can just darken down the whole image a little bit more. So that kind of gives us the effect across the image. And remember, because everything that we've done here is on a different adjustment layer, we can go in and kind of correct those effects. So in other words, if I just grab on the edge of there and we go above, we switch all of these off. If there's anything that's kind of, you're thinking, is that really doing anything? So you might find the color gradient is a little bit too much for you. So we could go in and actually change the opacity down just that little bit more if we felt it was a little bit too much. And if you want to see what all of those effects together are doing, if we shift click all of these together and pop them into a new group, we can switch all those colors off at the same time with it and things. So the good news about doing that is if you've got a set of colors that you really like, we can actually drag this kind of group, this set of adjustment layers onto another image. But already what we've done, if we pop all of these together now as a new group, you can see how we began the image, and actually how we've kind of created a little bit more of a fine art. It's kind of in trend still, especially in the world of dog photography and things, really. So you can see here we've worked in exactly the same way, except the flare has gone orange because we chose an orange color from the kind of the background within here. And similarly, that's that kind of effect that we had before, where we kind of got it ready for you to actually see. So if I just go down into choosing perhaps the girls with the dog, and we open that one up, let's just do this a little bit quicker. I could go in and obviously adjust the contrast of the image, the tone, whatever it is. We're not going to work in RAW for now, but as default, you know, I would be working in some kind of preset as a rule that I'm going to be using within my photography. Yep. And then we're going to open that up. We won't save it as a JPEG, straight with it in the likes of here. And if we repeat exactly what we just did, we can just go in and first of all, make one of the selection tools. Then we can go in and select the subject. It hasn't selected the dog. So let's go in now and make sure we have an object selection. Well, it's not, oh, the dog is there, so I can shift click onto that one as well. So there's our dog within the image. Yep. Now we're just going to go into select the mask. We're going to just make sure that we go in and do the hair specifically. Just down here as well. Pretty much looks like a good selection that we've done no matter what. Let's do the doggy as well. It's all hair, so which is good. We're going to open this up as a new layer with layer mask. Going to press OK. So they're still there as we can see. Remember what we did? Control J, duplication layer, and then we want to select onto the selection, and we want to go into. Let's first of all, though, before we do that, let's convert it to a smart object. Good practice, Mark. And we're going to go up into filter, blur gallery, tilt shift. What's this tilt shift? First of all, let's make it quite extreme. Let's narrow down the actual tilt shift as well, so it's going to be quite narrow. It's going to be down by the dog, of course, otherwise it wouldn't make sense. Transition up a touch. I'm just going to press cancel to that for a minute. I'll tell you why. Selection around the girls still. Can you see it? So I want to control D that. Yeah, we don't want to be doing that. We want to actually have no selection on here at all. We just want to go up now in the filter, the blur gallery, back into tilt shift, down again. If I'd kept the selection live, it would have only affected the selection to the image instead of what we're trying to do. Pressing OK. And let's make it quite bad. Here we go. It's OK. And pressing there. What's the mistake we made? It's if you just tilt shift without filling in the background, words getting rid of the background, the edit, and then we kind of filled it, you're going to end up with this halo and it's going to look false. So remember what we're trying to do to begin with is to fill these girls in. So let's go into the edit. Sorry, making sure that's live. It is. And we're going to go into image. Sorry, content aware fill. It's because I made it a smart object first, like an idiot. Let's do that again. So I just did Control Z to step backwards through that to go back to where it was before a smart object. Now we're going to go into our edit and content aware fill. It's going to do our job for us. Just going to quickly just press OK. S then to, we're going to retouch these together. So let's flatten them, Control E, switch off the girls. Let's just D now, and we'll just go in and quickly pick up the healing brush tool. We'll just go now and just get rid of the main parts so we don't end up with a halo. You can see how we've got all the kind of the hair still coming through. Just get rid of that. Just copy little bits around. The content aware will still do a basic job to begin with, especially as we're going to be getting rid of all this kind of stuff in a minute. Let's just do that. So I'm just picking up little bits so I can kind of quickly show the same technique for you again. And remember, if you need to actually drag the patch tool, just go and grab the patch tool. If you've got kind of bits down here that you really want to disguise, drag them away to somewhere where you can copy texture to and from, especially down where the dog was. Let's just go and get some bits. Okay, so in that one in mind, it's now we want the tilt shift. So we're going to convert it to Smart Object first, and then go into Filter, Blur Gallery, Tilt Shift. You know what we're doing. You can see what I was on about to you before. If you don't have that live active layer, you're not going to see the girls where they actually are. Remember, we want it down near where the dog is, so I can kind of guesstimate for now. But because it's a content aware, a smart object, I could actually go back into here and basically just double click it and go, well, I made that mistake. Let's move it back down a little bit more with it. We can add in some softness here where it's going and so on with it, just pressing OK. And then when we've got a kind of a look and a feel to what we like, if we haven't made an action up and we've kind of got some of the coloring that we really like, we can go ahead and actually drag it on top of the image and just let go. And all of a sudden, you've changed the whole image by adding in coloring or whatever it would be based on what you've kind of had in the past and things really. So the only thing that we don't have within this image is the flare. So again, above the background layer or this tilt shift layer, a new layer, just go and B for brush. We want to go and choose a color that is within the image. Go in and basically let's add it from here. Now we go and Control T. Oh, wrong button. Now we go in Control T to make it bigger. And I'm going to make that lighter, in fact. Just that one layer by making it on the levels. There we go. Pressing OK. Let's make it a little bit bigger so it kind of starts to wash through them more. There we go. And we've created ourselves a kind of more of a fine arty kind of finishing things really. I'd still recommend that you really watch how you apply and use this technique because again, like all stylized things, it can work with some images great and it works with other images not as good. But again, if you like the idea of the fine art and how you can kind of adjust with it, you can see how we can really let's just grab these into a new, here we go. So if we starting off as the original and then you start to actually apply the blur and then you add in the color, you think of it in those different ways. So in that same thing with the girls here, the only thing we didn't do, of course, is going in and adding in now a adjustment layer from the likes of the brightness and contrast here, where we can go in and basically kind of take the brightness down overall to the image, and depends on where you're kind of doing the adjustments with it and things really. But you can see how that alone has kind of adjusted the whole kind of look and feel no matter what. Hope you've enjoyed this quick Photoshop school. I'll hang around for questions. Thanks for joining me live.